That half-second was all it took. 265 pounds of explosives struck the steel hull just above the waterline, right where the far side of the plating held the fuel tank. A few miles away, a second drone was closing in, and its camera fed back a black and white image, grainy and slightly shaky. In that frame, the ship that had just been hit bloomed into a white blossom of fire against the black glass. But the thing worth noticing wasn't the burning ship. It was the three other columns of flame farther off, out toward the horizon. Tonight, the Sea of Azov didn't have one target. It had 13. Let's rewind a few hours to where it all began. 9:15 p.m. north of Kharkiv, the FP-1S left their rails, dipped once, then banked to the southeast, the sound of their two-cylinder engines fading into the dark. This was the northern group, and it had the longest way to go, nearly 480 miles across the border to reach the Ilsky oil refinery in Krasnodar. For the FP-1, that's a trifle, since it can fly as far as 994 miles, even if its speed is only around 87 to 112 miles per hour, slower than the car that just passed you on the highway. 10:30 p.m. south of Dnipro, another flight left the launch rails. Same booster, same plywood airframe, but this central group turned south and drove straight into the depths of the Crimean Peninsula. Their target list ran to 41 points. Airfields, fuel depots, command posts, communication stations, substations. In short, anything that could be plugged in or set on fire. They took off more than an hour later than the northern group, yet they would be the first flight to reach their targets just after midnight. 11:55 p.m., the coast near Odessa. The final group left the rails, and this was the smallest flight, flying the lowest, edging out to sea to the east before curving back up. The southern group would arrive at the Kerch Strait around 3 o'clock in the morning, later than the other two, right at the darkest hour before dawn, when every duty crew on the planet performs worse, and no army has ever solved that problem. All three flights were timed to arrive one behind the other, rather than all at once, each pulling a share of the attention toward itself. The reason is simple. Because a radar has only one field of view, a crew has only so many pairs of eyes, and a finite number of rounds sit in the launch tubes. So forcing it to look three ways at once is forcing it to choose. And to choose always means to abandon. Exactly like three children bolting into three different rooms of your house while you have only two hands and one pair of eyes, and every one of them knows it. The wolf pack wasn't hunting blind either, because every ship had been named in advance. Bravety would later reel off on Telegram a list that sounded like a classroom roll call. Sonar 1, Sonar 17, Clementina, Teddy, Alexei Safronov, Penelope, Venera 3. Each name a 7,000-ton ship, 459 feet long. The irony is that they were supposed to be invisible, because to dodge sanctions, the entire Shadow Fleet had to switch off its AIS positioning transponders. But once the positioning is off, they still have to run the same Kerch channel, call at the same ports, keep the same schedule. So the problem laid on the desk of Russia's air defense that night was a bitter one. What they had to shoot down cost about as much as a used SUV, while the interceptor missile they'd used to bring it down is usually 5 times more expensive than the target itself. And tonight, they were invited to enjoy that privilege from 3 directions on 3 separate timetables for 6 hours straight. Of the 3 flights just mentioned, which one do you think was the feint and which was the real blade? Comment and let me know before you read on, and we'll check it together. 12:15 a.m. The screen of an S-400 battalion on the western side of the peninsula suddenly lit up. The Central Drone Group had just entered Crimean airspace, exactly as the flight plan had calculated in advance. The 96L6 radar, the piece of hardware the Russians proudly called the eye of the whole system, was painting a picture no manual had ever prepared its crew for. On the screen, dozens of blips crawled all over the peninsula, from Yevpatoria across Saki and stretching all the way toward Kerch. They flew low, flew so slow it was almost insulting, and their radar cross-section was maddeningly small, because the thing up there was made of plywood coated in radar-absorbent material, rather than the aluminum and steel that everything this system was built to shoot down was made of. The commanding officer had about 30 seconds to answer a single question. Among that mess of blips, which one is the real target? And here is the trap that Russia's defense industry built for itself decades ago. The S-400 is the most expensive scalpel in the world, born to bring down strategic bombers at a range of 250 miles, and to face NATO in a war people imagined back in the 90s. Each 48N6 in those launch tubes cost millions of dollars. And tonight, that scalpel was assigned to SWAT flies. The problem isn't that it can't hit them. It's that the flies are infinite, while the rounds are not. And every time you swing $1 million scalpel to swat a fly worth $55,000, you are signing an invoice with your own hand that you'll ultimately have to pay. So the crew did what any crew on the planet would do, which is prioritize. They massed their fire to protect the 41 military targets on the peninsula, the things every manual classifies as must hold at all costs. Airfields, fuel depots, command posts, radar stations, substation. It was a reasonable decision, correct doctrine, exactly the way they've been trained their entire careers. And tonight, it was completely wrong. Because the real target of the night wasn't anywhere on the peninsula. It was floating on the water a few miles offshore, loaded with oil, crawling along at 9 knots and utterly unprotected. The Russians had just pulled every smoke detector out of the kitchen and mounted them in the living room, only to be surprised moments later when dinner caught fire. 1:30 a.m. The S-400 batteries had swung their tubes toward the airfields and fuel depots on the mainland, and tonight they would stand there the whole time. The northern group was still half an hour from reaching Krasnodar, and the southern group was still quietly crawling low over the sea, about an hour and a half's flight from the Kerch Strait, and across the entire radar screen of this peninsula, no one was really looking that way. If you sat in that commanding officer's chair that night, with 30 seconds and a screen full of blips,